28th, 2020 meeting of the Parker Planning Commission to order at 7 p.m. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. John?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you, John. Thank you, audience, wherever you are. Roll call. Just say here. Ileana.
Here.
Eric.
Here.
Rich.
Here.
John.
Here.
Tracy.
Here.
Ruth Ann.
Here.
Gary Poole here. We also have members, Commissioners Susan and Kim, who are observing but not seated tonight. Are there any additions to or deletions from the agenda, Bryce?
No, sir, there are not.
Okay. Approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes from April 9th, 2020?
No, sir.
We need a motion to approve.
I move we approve the minutes from April 29th.
April 9th.
April 9th.
Or April 9th, I'm sorry.
A second.
Was that Eric?
Yes.
Moved by John, seconded by Eric, that we approve the minutes from April 9th, 2020. I will call the roll. Ileana?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tracy?
Abstain. I was not at that meeting.
You can
Okay.
still vote.
You can
Okay.
still vote.
Aye.
Ruth Ann?
Aye.
Gary Poole, yes. Okay. Next item number 8, is a public meeting. A draft ordinance number 3.01.122 is a bill for an ordinance to amend section 13.01.080 of the Parker Municipal Code concerning fees to be established by council resolution. We will open the public meeting at 7:02. Bryce?
Thank you, Chair. Members of the Planning Commission. As noted, before you tonight is an amendment to section 13.01.080 regarding the establishment of land development user fees. I have with me tonight Danette Robertson, who's been working diligently on this project, and she's going to help with the presentation as well. So tonight we're going to cover the proposed changes to 13.01.080. And then Danette is going to give some history on the user fee study, the methodology, the comparables, the cost recovery, and then we'll wrap up with our recommendation to the Planning Commission. The proposed changes to the code include reorganization of the fee payment sections, removing the statement that the fee schedule will be kept in the town clerk's office. As you know, we live in a modern world and everything is kept online. We'll clarify the fee schedule is set by town council, and it will change the process for engineering fees from chargeback to flat fees. The way the chargeback works is that the developer or the applicant puts forward a certain amount of money, and our engineering department draws from that fund and then returns the difference. This will change to a less administratively burdensome process in which it's just a flat fee for all different types of, or differentiated by the different type of project. And Danette, do you want to begin?
Yes, definitely. First of all, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for having me this evening. As Bryce indicated, I have been working on this project for quite some time, a little bit over a year. To give you a little bit of background, it is a municipal best practice to conduct a comprehensive user fee study periodically, usually about every 3 to 5 years. In Parker, it's been a little bit longer. It's been over 10 years since we've done such a study. So the town engaged a firm, Tischler Bice Incorporated. They are a fiscal analysis firm, very versed in municipal finance. We engaged them with a 3-pronged approach. They gave us 3 different work products. One of them was an impact fee. They did an impact fee study. The other was the user fee study. And another one was the paying for growth policy document. The results of the user fee study, which I'll be focusing on tonight, were presented to the town council in January 2020 during the budget retreat. And the actual fee schedules will be presented to town council on June 1st with an effective date of June 15th.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Danette, is that the right slide?
Danette, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, if you'll go back one slide, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. I'm just going to go through this quickly. The methodology that our partner used when they were going through the user fee study is, typically we look at user fees from who benefits, the type of service, and whether that service should be subsidized by taxpayer dollars. So if you look at this chart going from the top, you'll see that the police department is, 100% of public service. And so that's subsidized 100% with taxpayer dollars. As you go down the chart, you go to different areas where in recreation, for example, some of those fees, the benefit is derived by just the individual. And then there's also a community component in that the community benefits because, we have a healthier, a healthier community, we have youth sports and that type of thing. And then you go to the bottom. So typically in municipal government, we think of development services as a 100% fee-based service. And so that's where we're coming from on the study is we first wanted to see where we are with our 100% fee recovery. And that's the best way. And, it sets a baseline for setting policy. Next slide, please. So in the study, what we looked at is we looked at the direct department cost. So the department costs are derived for any development related services. They are from community development, the planning and building division, engineering, public works, from parks and recreation. And so it's everybody who touches a development review. And then we calculated department overhead and then just the centralized overhead from the town. Next slide, please. So as we looked through, as we went through this process and the methodology of calculating exactly how much time was spent, we also looked at comparables throughout the community. So if you look at this chart, the red diamond was Parker's current fees. So that's Parker's current fees in all of these different application types. And then the peer communities, you will see that they are much higher than Parker. And so that's one of the results that came out of the study is that Parker was significantly lower if you were looking, strictly at where we compare. So not only did we look at the comparables, we also looked to see what our own cost recovery is. And if you go to the next slide, the user fee cost recovery, it gave us a point of 100%. And we realized that it wasn't feasible to recommend fees at 100% because if that brought us too out of line with other communities, then we could experience some difficulties. So there are some categories in which staff recommended that we adopt fees at a lower cost recovery level than 100%. Next slide, please. So if you'll take a look at this chart, what you'll see is in red, of course, Parker's current fee in all of the different fee types. The blue bar is the peer community range, which we saw on the other chart. The green bar is when we calculated our own cost recovery, that's at 50%. And then the purple triangle, that's 100%. So some of these, there are some outliers here. You'll notice the site plan residential multifamily. When the consultants were looking at the data, there were some anomalies that occurred. It was something that occurred that wouldn't happen in ordinary times. And so when we took that into consideration when we set the fees, knowing that, that situation would not occur again. So this just gives you an idea of where our own cost recovery is compared to where other peer communities set their prices. And keep in mind, other peer communities, it's really hard to compare apples to apples because another community like Aurora, they're completely different than we are, and they may use their fee policy to incentivize certain types of development or to dissuade certain types of development. So that's something to keep in mind. Next slide, please. So to summarize what changes that we made, as Bryce mentioned earlier, it's that transition in the engineering fee structure from the chargeback to the flat fee. And so what we did is we actually used the study methodology of determining time spent for each activity. And so for all of the engineering activities, we set a price based on what it actually cost them to do that. We also, in the plan, we had an incremental increase in building fees. That was another thing that came out of the study, was that our building fees, our valuations were much lower than other communities. So what we did is we set that exactly at the same level as other communities, within our area. When we looked at the planning cost, what we did there is we took that 100% cost recovery level and we identified where we wanted to, our recommended fee for that particular cost recovery. When we had our conversation with town council in January, they were a little bit concerned about implementing all of the increases all at once. And so they asked us if we would phase in the costs. And so that's what we're doing. So in 2020, we will have 50% of what we're recommending, and then we'll go to 100% in the planning division. We also added legal review fees, which we had not typically charged before, and is very standard in municipal government practice. We've also added in an annual increase of fees based on construction cost index. So those are, just summarize some of the changes that we've made. Next slide, please. So if we're looking at planning fees, so these are the recommendations. So you saw the slide earlier that showed where our cost recovery was, our cost recovery came in at 100%, 50%, and 25%. So this yellow diamond is where we have recommended, and we have presented an entire fee schedule to the mayor and town council. In addition, we have also met with the development liaison committee to share this information with them. And essentially, the message that we sent was that this is something that we haven't done in quite some time. We have not been raising our fees, and have not looked at it through that comprehensive lens. And so so this is just essentially catching us up to where we would be ordinarily. So if you'll take a look again, across all of these different application types, you'll see where we have made those recommendations. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, and just to give you an idea, the reason that we're bringing forward the ordinances and the resolutions is one of the things we wanted to do, which is also another best practice, is to is to have these fee schedules in resolution, adopt them with a resolution. What that does is it makes it a lot easier for us to adjust the fees annually. So what our practice going forward is to adjust the fees annually during the budget process. And then from there, every 5 years, we may need to do another comprehensive user fee study. So the proposed amendments to section 13.01080 are in support of the town's efforts to pay for growth and development related services. And staff recommends the Planning Commission recommend to Town Council that they approve an ordinance amending section 13.10.080 regarding land development application fees. And so once again, this is just removing those fees from the from municipal code and putting those into the resolution. And I would be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Questions for Danette?
Danette, this John Howard, the one question I have is, this is going to be, if town council passes it, going to affect on June 15th?
That's correct.
Would that have any effect on previously submitted applications with funds that have already been paid or held?
No, it wouldn't. It goes into effect. So from the effective date, the criteria is the application would have to be complete. And so if there was an application that was already submitted and completed, then it would essentially be grandfathered and would not be subject to the new fees.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Yes, Danette, I have a question. Can you go back to the planning, the schedule? So I'm not sure I heard you, so I want to make sure, just for my own purposes of brain matter, the scheduled fees that we have now are in place. And then you said that you might need to do a reassessment in 5 years. What's going to happen to those fees between now and 5 years? I missed that part.
Oh, okay. So in 2020, so we made recommendations for certain target fees based on a cost recovery amount. So for example, for one application type, we would recommend that we charge a 100% cost recovery. Because town council was concerned about developers having to, take that additional expense on so quickly, what we've done is we've targeted a 2-year phase in. So, so say that we had a fee, I'm just going to use a round number, that was $1,000, and that was the recommendation. For 2020, that fee would be $500. In 2021, that fee would go up to $1,000. And then 2022, every subsequent year after that, from that $1,000, we would increase it by construction cost index, whatever that percentage is.
And that's an unknown, correct?
That's unknown. That's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Other questions?
Annette, can you help me understand the pricing? Obviously, town council is going to set the pricing, but is there a significant cost difference between a site plan for a non-residential versus residential? I saw there's a pretty drastic difference between the two. Is there a reason behind that?
I'll let Bryce answer that one.
Yeah, so I can probably answer that a little better than Danette. There is a significant difference, primarily because when we're doing a non-residential, we're usually looking at a single building on a contained 1 acre lot, 2 acre lot, something like that. When you get into multifamily approvals, we're looking at, multiple buildings, 10, 12 buildings, much more landscaping. We're analyzing parks. So there's a significantly more staff time looking at one of those.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
Oh, along the same line as Eric's question, I was just wondering why the plan development amendment fee was going to be higher than the general charges that people have in other communities.
Yeah, Bryce, if you could go ahead.
So part of that is just negotiation time. Other jurisdictions may may support PDs, and so their fees may be a little lower. Not every organization does 100% cost recovery. A lot of them do some sort of recovery, and then they decide what they want to encourage through their fee schedule. But when it comes to PDs and PD amendments, we do spend a lot of time on those, negotiating language, those types of things. And so our time frame when we looked at this was not, it was limited to, I think, 6 months. So it was whatever was going on in those 6 months. So obviously we don't go back years and years on the amount of time we spend on those, but it really is a good reflection of where we're at in our review times.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
I have one last question. Sorry. Was any of this, did we go to the development community at all and get any feedback from them on some of these fees and some of our process?
We did. We did meet with the Development Liaison Committee. In the beginning, as we were going through the impact fee study, we met with developers and had stakeholder meetings on impact fees. So we looked at it as, we looked at all three components of the engagement that we had with Tischler Weiss. As far as, as far as impact and having them, tell us whether they thought they were too high and that type of thing, because it's something very different than the impact fees. User fees are, when I showed you that slide of, benefits that are derived to an individual or to an entity, we did make the decision that we were going to use the results of the study and not necessarily feedback from developers. So it was a little bit different approach, and that's very typical. A user fee study is just looking at what is our cost recovery and then making those policy decisions of how much do we want the community to subsidize development, and where is that level? And so that's how we took that approach. But we did meet with the in the Development Liaison Committee and gave them a presentation. We also gave them all of the study data, and they were able to see all of the methodology and have been made ourselves available for any questions before we go to council.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions for Danette? Okay, hearing none, this is the time where citizens are encouraged to speak publicly. The use of video conference technology can be challenging when inviting public comment. Therefore, to help us proceed in an organized fashion, we request that you use the raise your hand feature to indicate that you would like to speak, and we will acknowledge speakers in the order they are received. When you are acknowledged for your turn to speak, we request you introduce yourself by stating your name and address and speak respectfully. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. And we will open the public comment portion of the meeting. Rosemary, do we have any hands raised?
We have none.
Okay. I guess we will close the public comment section. Do we need further information from Danette or Bryce?
No.
No, sir.
All right, we will close the public hearing at 7:23. Planning Commissioner discussion. I'll start just down the roll. Ileana.
Well, this is something that for me has always intrigued me as to why Parker has always been on the lower scale. So the fact that you're actually coming up to the level where you are in sync with the surrounding communities, I think it's a great idea and it should move forward.
Eric?
Yeah, I'm along the same lines as Ileana. I think it's good for the town to recoup as much cost as we can with development, passing the fees along to developers as much as we can, as much as feasibly. So I'm in support.
Rich?
Yes, I'm in agreement with Eric and Ileana about increasing the fees and becoming more in line with other jurisdictions. So I'm in favor of this.
John?
I agree with what my fellow commissioners have said, and I also feel this is long overdue, and it will be good for the town and good for the developers both, I feel.
Tracy?
I don't have much else to add. I'm in support and I like to see the alignment with the town. I think we are going on the right path and you have my support.
Ruth Ann?
I'm always happy when we move to best practices in town, and I agree with the rest of my fellow commissioners.
I am in total support of this, and even more so given the current state of the town's budget. We need, if we're going to provide services to some extent, those services, the people using them need to pay their own way. And I think this is a good middle ground towards getting to that point. Do we have a motion?
I move the Planning Commission recommend Town Council approve an ordinance to amend the Parker Municipal Code regarding establishing fees by council resolution.
I second.
It's moved by John, seconded by Ileana, that the Planning Commission recommend Town Council approve an ordinance to amend the Parker Municipal Code regarding the establishing fees by council resolution. I will call the roll. Ileana.
Aye.
Eric.
Aye.
Rich.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Tracy.
Aye.
Ruth Ann.
Aye.
Gary Poole, yes. All right, motion passes unanimously. Staff items, Bryce, Rosemary.
So just for those of you that didn't hear when Gary and I were speaking about ongoing Planning Commission virtual meetings due to the safer at home orders where we're limited to gatherings of 10 people safely, with planning commissioners and staff and applicants that would take up those 10 people. So we will continue to do virtual planning commissions meetings for the foreseeable future until those orders get changed.
Okay. Anything else, Bryce?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, then at 7:27, we will adjourn. See everybody next week.